just understanding how money moves was really an important concept that I didn't get introduced to until I was, out of high school and almost into college.
Money, it's a crime. Share it fairly, but don't take a slice of my pie.
This is just within 12 years of high school, 2 years as an apprentice learning how to flip homes, 4 years of traditional college, right? And still no sense of money, of how it really works, like clueless.
Money, it's a gas. Grab that cash with both hands and make a stash.
When you max out one credit card, they tell all their credit card friends. And when all the credit card friends discover that, they do one of two things or both things. In my case, they did both things. They both cut my amount of credit available to me, and they maxed out the interest rate at 29.99%.
Let my honesty spill out through the pages.
You're listening to Escaping the Rat Race. I'm your host, Amy Leo, a singer-songwriter and mental health educator. And our show is all about questioning the status quo and pushing the boundaries into what's possible for human beings and not probable. So tune in and get ready to escape the rat race, not only the monotonous 9-to-5 work grind, but also that incessant internal mental chatter that prevents most of us humans from experiencing more joy, peace, clarity, and freedom. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you find yourself in the world today. Maybe you're on the East Coast in the United States. Maybe you're in Thailand for vacation. I myself am in Amsterdam, and my featured guest is in sunny California. So how nice. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to both of our hearts. And it's really about folks getting more educated in the world of personal finance. So it really is going to be about escaping the rat race when we typically think of that phrase. So we're going to be talking about all things money. So my guest, Winston Widdes today, and I am curious, I'd like to start off the show by asking you this question. And I'm sure we could spend the whole hour just talking about this one question. But the question is this. So Winston, in your view, what should we have learned in school about money, in particular to personal finance?
Ooh, wow, that is a great question. And I want to preface my answer by saying that I am not an expert at this, so I don't want to give any false pretenses as far as that, but I can speak as far as having experience from coming from somebody who lacked that part of my education growing up, I would say, and so the education that I've sought out since my formal high school education has been the part that I think is relevant to what you're asking. And so for me, what that conversation or that education really looks like is understanding a couple of key things. Cash flow, first and foremost. And that's something I know that's near and dear to your heart and your listeners, I'm sure. And just understanding how money moves was really an important concept that I didn't get introduced to until I was, out of high school and almost into college. And then understanding credit and interest and being able to have access to credit and getting credit without really understanding all that comes with it and the ways that it could really ensnare someone who's not careful, such as myself. That was not watching the numbers, watching the bottom line and the details is not one of my strengths. And so because of that, I found myself in a lot of trouble early on in my career with credit cards, taking out, as an entrepreneur, getting loans that started off good, but then interest rates, that compounding interest that would sky high and, double and triple, and not understanding the effects of compound interest and how it was working against me. So those kind of concepts, understanding compound interest, understanding credit, understanding cash flow and good debt versus bad debt those kind of things, as far as I know, aren't talked about too often in the traditional school setting, and that's to our detriment, I think, as a society, as a culture here in the U.S. at least. I'm not sure how it is out in other parts of the world, but I would say that's something that a lot of us could probably benefit from.
Before returning to today's show, we want to define some of the terms used throughout this episode. Cash flow is essentially the movement of money. Money coming in and money going out of a business, asset, or personal financial endeavor. In personal finance, cash flow could be defined as the amount of money left over each month after paying necessary bills, debts, and other living expenses. An asset is something you acquire and own to put money in your pocket. Assets increase your positive cash flow and are used to generate wealth over time. They come in many forms, including real estate, stocks and bonds, or businesses that don't require your presence to operate. A liability is something you acquire which takes money out of your pocket. Liabilities increase expenses. Examples are loans, car loans, student loans, payment plans for that fancy TV, etc. Again, an asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. Passive income is receiving money on a regular basis from sources that require minimal to no effort by the recipient to maintain it. Examples of this would be rental property income, dividends and interest from accounts, stocks, bonds, intellectual royalties from patents, songwriting, books, etc. Another modern example of passive income is affiliate income. For instance, a link on your website pointing to web hosts like Bluehost or GoDaddy can earn commissions from every person that clicks on your link and signs up for one of their plans. Your job is not an example of passive income since you need to physically put in the work and time in exchange for money. After you run out of vacation or sick days, you will no longer receive income if you don't physically do the job. Let's return to the show and learn what Winston and Amy have seen about all of these terms in the real world.
Yes, when you said compound interest, my heart fluttered, Winston. Can you share a little bit, just the basics of that and why kind of being on the quote unquote right side versus the wrong side has real effects in your daily life, basically?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I was a young real estate agent fresh out of college and I was trying to build my business, I had some early success right out of the gate, which really helped keep me motivated, gave me some money to play with, and gave me some rope to go out and hang myself with in a sense, because with that, I was able to get a lot of credit. And this credit started off fairly inexpensively, 0% for 12 months, 0% for 16 months. Well, that's great. That's free money. People were willing to lend me money. And I was, 24-year-old kid trying to build a business. In 1 month, I'd made more money than I'd made in, 3 or 4 months working anywhere else. And so as far as I was concerned, I was destined to be successful and rock it. And, I'd easily pay off this debt. And I was investing very heavily in my education. I hired a business coach, and I was investing in lots of different marketing tools and learning about marketing. And meanwhile, I wasn't watching my bottom line. I wasn't watching how much money was being put on these credit cards. I just assumed I would, just figure out how to pay them off. And at one point, this had been going on, and I'd get a deal here or there, and I'd pay it down. And then somehow it seemed like overnight, but it was really because I was just caught up in life and all the other aspects that go with it, and building a business and being married, newlyweds and this and that. At some point, I had maxed out one of my credit cards. And I don't know if you know this or if your listeners know this. So what I found out at that point was that when you max out one credit card, they tell all their credit card friends. And when all the credit card friends discover that, they do one of two things or both things. In my case, they did both things. They both cut my amount of credit available to me, and they maxed out the interest rate at 29.99%. So I went from thinking I was doing pretty good and being fairly successful to realizing I was at $28,000 in credit card debt that I had no way of knowing how it's going to pay off. And it was at 29.99% compounding interest. And I nearly, you can imagine, what was going through my head. My, it's only been married for about a year at that point. This was not the kind of thing that we were envisioning for starting off our lives together. With $28,000 of credit card debt, that was way more than I even realized. And all my credit cards were maxed out. So they were all saying, hey, you got to pay us now. It's like, well, I had, twice this amount of credit yesterday. What happened? Like, oh, you maxed this out. So that was a real eye opener for me.
Mm.
So yeah, and I didn't know where to go from there. Fortunately for me and where I was in my business, I kept at it and I got a deal. And it's like I almost kind of hate to tell this part of the story, because it was like, was it dumb luck, or was it just, this is, in my experience, in my life patterns, this is how it's always kind of worked out. And it's a pattern that I've been very conscious to avoid from repeating. But I did dig myself out. I got a deal, and that month I had a 5-figure month, and I paid down a lot of that debt. And so it was almost like it was like, well, see, it worked. It's like I put all that credit, I invested in myself, I built all these systems, and now here it is working. And I had a great month, and I, paid off a good chunk of this, and I got these big deals, and I won top producer that month, and I was top listing agent, and this and that. So it's like, on the one hand, that's it kind of goes into this culture that happens, I think, in a lot of sales and marketing type atmospheres, where it's and maybe you've heard this, where it's like, hey, you want to have more sales this month? Great. Go out and buy a car you can't afford. Then you'll figure out how to make that sale. And it's like, and these are managers and people in leadership positions teaching salespeople this a lot of times. And, someone young and impressionable gets taught this, and it's like, oh, I guess that makes sense. Like, yeah, if I buy it, I'll just go make more sales and then I'll pay for it. It's like, well, if you didn't have that extra $500, $1,000 a month thing you have to pay for, you wouldn't have to go out and sell more stuff. Right? It's self-defeating. It doesn't make any sense, like, if you really think about it. But in that moment, it's like, well, there we go. I invested all that money, I got all that debt, and then I went and closed the deal and paid it all off. But if I hadn't accumulated all that debt, like, what could I have done with that extra 20 grand? It's like, I probably could have done some other things. So it's just it's an interesting thing. I don't know if I'm just rambling at this point, if I answered your question, Amy. I'm sorry. Where are we going?
Fantastic. I think we're right on track, Winston. No worries. It was really it made me giggle when you brought up that story, because that's like if you've ever heard this old, I don't know, it's some kind of proverb, maybe from India, I'm not quite sure, listeners, okay? But it goes something like this, that a guy's fishing on a boat, he's having a great time. Then this businessman comes along and says, well, why don't you, get a fleet of boats and you can run them and you can make a lot of money? And then basically kind of the moral of the story is, why would I do that? Oh, so you can have time to retire and go fishing. Well, the guy was already doing that, right? So it's like
right.
all of these hoops to come through and all this extraneous work and things like that. But I think it's really pertinent what you're pointing to, about this education piece and how it's so crucial. And a big thing on this show that we talk about is really questioning what is the norm, quote unquote, and getting educated in that piece. And I know for listeners, like they hear the term investing, for instance, and they think immediately, oh, I don't know anything about that, I'm bad with numbers, and they really tune out. So I'm wondering if you can really share some practical benefits of looking in that direction, because one thing that excites me about investing in that world is passive income. And passive income means I don't have to clock into a day job in order to make money. So can you share a little bit about that, Winston, how you see that?
Heck yeah. I love passive income. And and yeah, that's, I think, such the power and beauty of it is leverage, it's freedom, it's all these things. And so one of the biggest impacts for me in getting the concept of it was the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And when I read that book, it just blew my mind because I had never heard of money talked like that. And I never, and it's laid out in such clear, simple terms. And, in that book, he talks about his board game, Cash Flow 101. And that is not necessarily, for at least for me at that time, it was not a cheap board game. It's, I think, around $100, and I don't know what it is nowadays. But I remembered, I was like, man, I have to have this game. Like, I have to learn more about this cash flow idea and this concept and really practice it, because I'm not, and at that point I was out of college. I'd gone through all of high school, worked for a very successful flipper, home flipper. And that's where I really got my, a lot of my skills in learning how to flip real estate from the ground up, a very hands-on approach, working one-on-one, working for my mentor, friend, who was, and my boss was flipping these houses. And I realized, like, even though I learned that aspect of it, I still sucked at managing money. I still wasn't very good at, I didn't have any kind of plan. Like, I knew I wanted to be rich. I knew I wanted to be financially free and be able to make music and art and teach and do all these things I love to do without being tied to the, need to make the money. So how do I get there? And I saw one person do it. I saw it firsthand. My friend, Rich, who, was buying these houses. He was using credit cards, which blew my mind too. He was literally like getting these houses with some help, or some of the money he had, some of it he got help, but a lot of the materials and stuff he was putting on credit cards. And so there's these timelines, and we had to hit these timelines before he had the next payment on the credit card. He had to flip this house before the next payment on that was due. But he made it work, and it was amazing to see. And every day people would come by. He was like my own personal rich dad, right? He was a good friend, and I got to see the way he was doing it, and it's very unconventional, because people would come by all the time, his friends, and they'd want to sit and chill and just shoot the breeze. And it was very interesting to see the way these different people reacted to what he was doing. Okay. Because most of these people had day jobs. Some of them were successful lawyers. Some of them were just beach bums. Some of them were, you name it. And people from all walks of life. And they would see what he's doing. And most of them just thought he was insane. It's like, dude, how are you doing this? Like, why are you doing this? This is going to blow up. You're going to go bankrupt. And he was just like, like, I'm going to do this. I am doing this. And it looks crazy, but when it's all said and done, you guys are going to be like no one could see what he could see. He just had that faith that it was going to work, and he was going to make it work, and we were going to grind it out 80 hours a week, making it work. And we did. And there was no magic bullet. It was like, you just do it. And that's kind of how it is for the financial education, as I'm concerned. When I got the board game, Cashflow 101, we went, and my wife and I decided, we need some people to play with. So we went online, and we found a local couple who was also interested in playing. So we went over and played Cashflow 101 with them. And during that first game, I recognized that we were all starting to think about money differently. This is just within 12 years of high school, 2 years as an apprentice learning how to flip homes, 4 years of traditional college, right? And still no sense of money, of how it really works, like clueless. And to play that game for 1 hour totally changed the way I saw money and the way it worked in my life. And that was a huge, huge epiphany for me. So getting into the cash flow, it's like everything gets a lot simpler when you have a basic understanding of like, oh, this is good debt and that's bad debt. That's a liability. That's an asset. Like, shoot, well, all I have to do is get enough passive income to pay for all my expenses and I'm free. That's it. Like, that doesn't seem so hard. But there's all these, right? Oh yeah, that's kind of it for me. It's like there's a lot of ways to overcomplicate it, but it's really that simple, and that's why there's a lot of jokes around like, you don't have to be smart to do this. You don't have to be smart to get financially free. In fact, if you listen to any of Art Williams' speeches, he says like, smart people are probably at a disadvantage because they overthink it and they overcomplicate it, and they spend so much time trying to look for an easier way or a better way that they never just get around to doing anything. And really, it's blue collar work. It's just doing it, creating those assets, creating that business, and just watching that cash flow. And is it positive? Is it negative? Is this good debt or bad debt? Everything else is just kind of overcomplicating it.
Yeah, it's so true. It just brings me back to that story that you were sharing about, these managers telling folks to go out and afford that expensive car. Now, for some people, that's in alignment with what they really value and they want to spend their money that way, and that's cool. But it's
right.
Also, you have to see the flip side of that you do have to then create more passive income. You're making a choice with what you do with your money all the time. So for me, I've lived in 5 different countries over the past 5 years, and a crucial component of that has been cash flow, has been keeping monthly expenses low, and then it gives me the flexibility in a month to choose to, I don't know, treat myself to a gourmet meal if I want, or to go to this country, or whatever it is. I think it does get so overcomplicated. It's almost so simple that we don't see it. It's almost like, again, that story of 3 feet from gold, working to climb up the corporate ladder. And, a lot of times I come across people that really believe that a certain number will mean that all their money worries and problems go away. And I've seen in my life and in my practice as a coach that is just not true. It seems to be that whatever beliefs you had about money just get magnified. Have you had that experience show up around you and your community as well?
Wow, that's a huge point, Amy. Absolutely. That idea of this magic number, and then once I get there, I'll be happy. Once I get there, I'll be fulfilled, right? I'll be rich, and nothing else will matter. And that's some folks very close to me personally, for sure, have have had that, and I've grown up around that in a lot of respects. And so, and it's just not true, right? And like you said, it can actually amplify it and make it worse. It's like, shoot, I hit this number and I'm still not happy, or I'm still not done. It's like it's not. It didn't do what they thought it would do, right? Yeah, that's for sure. And I think that car illustration, like you said, for some people it is an alignment. And I'm not dissing people that want fancy cars. Like, I drive a car that some people would say is fancy, but like, I paid cash for it and it's 10 years old because that's my style. That's the way that works for me. But when you talk about what is it that is going to make somebody happy, then it's like you have to reverse engineer it, and you can't really in my opinion, using money as the indicator or as the metric for it is not a very accurate way to get there, because that number always, it can change, or it's kind of irrelevant to it in a certain degree. Like you pointed out, for you've been able to keep your expenses very low, and that offers you freedom. You've been in 5 different countries. You're calling from Amsterdam right now. That's incredible. Right? And it's because you're on top of those numbers, you know what they are. And because you have low expenses, you don't have to bring in that much to cover those expenses. So there's, for some people, they want that fancy car. They want that big house. They want this. Okay, great. That's okay too. If those are things that make you happy and they're in alignment, great. So all that means is that you have to have more cash flow to cover it, right? You've got a bigger monthly nut to cover. So it's, that part of it's kind of irrelevant as long as you're clear about what those things are that you want, and whether or not that's really going to give you the happiness or the fulfillment that you're after. And if you're just after the number part of it without asking the why do I want that? Why do I want a big house? Why do I want a fancy car? Why do I want this or that? Then it's like, well, when you get there, it's that whole, like, you had your ladder against the wrong wall kind of thing, right? Like, oh, I reached the top of corporate America, I reached the glass ceiling, but now I'm looking and I realize I spent the last 5 years climbing a ladder that went to the wrong place. Right.
Mm.
So that idea of like, for you, obviously travel is something I'm guessing you like to do. And so, so you were able to see like, oh, it doesn't really cost that much money to travel when you do it, in a certain way like that. You probably were able to cut out a lot of expenses that for me, if, like not being much of a traveler, like I would have thought like, oh man, it's got to cost a fortune to go to Amsterdam. Oh, it's got to cost so much money to do this and that. And but that would be like more of a money centric focus. Like, oh, I got to have at least like $10,000 a month if I'm going to be living in a foreign country, because I'm just clueless along that, in that respect. But for someone like you, who is able to look at the actual logistics and, plan that out, figure it out, it's like, well, the numbers that I would come at it with and the numbers that you came at it with would be completely different, right? Because we came at it from two different angles. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it just, for me, I enjoy having this conversation because it puts the power back in our hands as consumers, quote unquote, instead of blindly purchasing things or doing it because everyone else is doing it. Actually, when you were speaking, Winston, I was reminded of one of the choices I've had to make in order to accommodate this lifestyle. And that was when I was living in Queens, my best friends and I always had this dream of living together. And we were kind of going along with it. And then I realized I need to be honest here, because me spending $800 in rent doesn't make sense with my life right now. Right. So I made a conscious choice in that moment to not sign on with my girlfriends, even though, it was something we talked about. It was a choice that then allowed me to have, again, an extra $800 a month that wasn't tied up in an apartment in Queens where I wasn't living most of the time. I mean, like logistically, it just makes sense. And I really I don't know if you've read this book, I'm guessing probably, but it's another good one, Your Money or Your Life. And in that one, they talk about folks really getting clear on like what their hourly wage is, and then kind of using that as a base point for, okay, if I buy this flat screen TV, how many hours of my life have I exchanged? And that's an interesting way to look at it that I think we aren't always so aware of.
Ooh, yeah, that's a really, really great point. And it is kind of like a hidden cost for a lot of things. And back to that idea of like the expensive car, for instance, and lifestyle choice, and you choosing, to not sign on with your friends and saving that $800. It's like, those are the kind of decisions that really have huge impacts on us, and whether we're aware of it or not, right? So another really great book that comes to my mind is The 4-Hour Workweek. Tim Ferriss, who in his book, he's talked about what he calls dreamlining, I think was the term he used. And it's like, okay, if you want that car, let's say the payment's $500 a month on your dream car. Well, if you're just going to sign up for this car, you're going to put, let's say, $2,500 down or whatever to be able to get this car. If you do that, and then you're paying this $500 for a lease, or for this expensive car, the moment you drive it off the showroom floor, we know that it loses 25% or more of its value. So right off the bat, you're taking this huge hit. You're taking a loss. And then every month you keep it and drive it, you're taking more and more of a loss, but you're still paying on it, way past plus the interest, right? The compounding interest on the loan. So you're paying all this money that you're not even aware of, that most people aren't even aware of. Yet if someone was to look and say, okay, how can I spend this $2,500 to buy a cash flowing asset that will put my money to work for me, that will get me $500 of cash flow to pay for that car? Completely different conversation, because you could still get that car, but now instead of buying a liability and shackling yourself to these payments and this liability, you're buying something that's working for you to pay for that toy, to pay for that luxury. And that's, for me, was just such a mind-blowing idea, just a shift in my awareness of like, gosh, well, I could spend money on this, or I could save up and work towards buying some investment property, by building my business. I like to build businesses. It's really fun for me. So if I had an extra $500 a month to throw toward a business that will, maybe I drive the same car for an extra 4 or 5 years, which I did, that was for me worth it, because even though, I wasn't driving the car of my dreams for a long time, I was able to do things and put things in position that allowed me to now own the car of my dreams, paid off completely, and still have assets and things working for me that give me the freedom that I was truly after. So that's kind of, for me, the big shift is just kind of, that money or your life thing. It's like, okay, if you're working for, you're trading time for money, then you really got to be on the ball with what you said. If I'm making $10 an hour and I want to go buy this new thing that costs $10, it's like, am I willing to trade 1 hour of my life to own this doodad that I'm going to throw away in a couple weeks? It changes the conversation, right?
Yeah. Oh, this just tickles me. I could talk about this for days. So let's see. I really enjoyed the dreamlining reminder. I did read for our work week a while back. It's so funny how these things kind of get, kind of stored in your brain, kind of maybe subconsciously, and you're not even aware that they have had an effect, but they do. And that's the beauty of education. And I think that's something we're both really passionate about. So yeah, give me kind of, just for fun, how you have envisioned building more passive income or having more of a cash flow. I mean, do you have a budget, Winston, or what kind of things do you do personally, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's a great question, Amy. So right now, I've spent the last about year of my life really shifting, really consciously shifting from. So I'll give you a little bit of background. So, and you and I met through Chiama's event, right?
Yeah.
So so this was a music event, right? And at that time, I had been DJing professionally for probably since about 2000. 2003 is when I really got serious, because that's when I graduated. End of 2003, beginning of 2004. So when I graduated from college and, just started working as an entrepreneur, as a music teacher, as a DJ, building my DJ business. And so I had been doing I'd been doing music professionally for a good while, and what was interesting about that for me was when I shifted out of, and that was my dream job. I was living my dream. I was teaching music to kids, which was definitely very important to me. I very much appreciated that opportunity. And then I was also, doing real estate. And that was very important to me because I was getting to help people buy and sell homes. I was helping people own a piece of the American dream. I was building my own wealth. And then, when the real estate market crashed, I got out and went back to focusing on music. And I was in the club scene for a while, but it didn't take long before I realized, there's just not enough money here to sustain the lifestyle that I want and that my wife wants, right? And so I went into corporate. And I started working more corporate and weddings because that's where the money is. So I did that, and I built my business, and I was able to do that and teach private music, and even start teaching at some schools, music in some schools. So I did that for a long time, and then I went to that event, and it was a great experience. I signed up for the mastermind because I believe in investing in myself, and I saw that the people there were all very highly motivated and very inspiring. And as I was going through the mastermind in the year of, the idea, a big part of the mastermind was to really help people take their music business to the next level. And for me, I felt like I'd already kind of been through a lot of that. As I was going through the program, I was like, this really isn't what I want anymore. Like, I've been doing this. And really, I'm tired of working for my money this hard. Like, I love playing music. I love DJing. It's been a total blessing that I've been able to do it as long as I have. But I'm still working for my money. I'm still trading time for money at the end of the day. And yeah, it's cool. And yeah, it's great. But at the end of the day, if I don't work, I don't make money. I mean, yeah, I have, between my brother and I, we have some passive cash flow property. So, we do have that, but not enough, not enough to live on for sure. And so it was like, okay, this is a wake up call. It's time to shift gears. We got my second son on the way. Like this, something needs to change, right? Something needs to change. And I'm not fulfilled enough to, I'd already lived my dream job. My dream job was performing music and playing music professionally. Okay, done, check. Now what? How do I do it where I don't have to try to make money doing it? How do I do it just for fun? Once upon a time I did this stuff for fun. Now it's work. So that's when I realized, like, gosh darn, like I want to still be able to teach and inspire people, but I want to do it now, like in this realm of passive income, of financial education, of real estate. And for me, this last year has really been about getting more and more clear about what that looks like. Right now I'm a full-time consultant. I teach real estate investors how to build their businesses online, how to build their web presence and create lead generation tools and systems so that they can, automate a lot of their marketing online. And it's a real joy. I get to do this every day. I literally get to change people's lives with the information that I'm sharing with them and the systems I get to teach them. So it's very fulfilling. And at the same time, I'm revamping the way that I do my investing, the way that I'm building my real estate investing business, because I don't want to be just a real estate agent anymore. I don't want to just, again, that's trading time for money. Yeah, it's bigger paychecks, but at the end of the day, it's still trading time for money. So for me, it boils down to, okay, what's my end game? Let's work backwards. End game, I want to be able to stay home all day because I'm a homebody, if I'm being honest. Stay home all day with my kids, with my wife. She wants to go out. So when she wants to go out, we'll go out. I want to have enough money to go out wherever she wants to go. Take cool vacations, goof off, play music, train jiu-jitsu, and call it a day, and that, like, it's simple. You spend a couple, go out to dinner once or twice a week, nothing fancy, that's our lifestyle. And to get there, it's like, well, it doesn't really take, I don't have to make $150,000, $250,000 a year to do that. I really only need to make about 65,000, 70,000. And our lifestyle is pretty much on autopilot. That's not a whole lot, at least here, in Southern California, it's like nothing. But when that occurred to me, it's like, well, gosh, if I can just get $700,000 to produce 10% return a year, I'm free. Well, that sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's all relative, right? So how can I provide enough value for people, for people in the marketplace to earn $700,000 that I can invest in these passive cash flow properties that I personally have access to now through my network, that I can, and it's like, well, gosh, but there's other people just like me. They don't have enough time to figure this stuff out on their own. They don't have time to go and like analyze these properties and these deals and get the property management in place and get it rented and get it rehabbed and blah, 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 blah. But yet I know people that do that. I know where these properties are. And if I just find other people like me that have money sitting in the bank getting 1% to 2% return, meanwhile the bank is using their money and lending it out at 7 or 8+%, that's, how can I help these people? How do I fit into this equation? And so really, for me, it's like, okay, I could pool as an agent, as a syndicator of real estate, as an investor. I can find these properties that are already rehabbed, already rented out, already being managed by a professional management company, turnkey passive income, turnkey cash flow properties, and be able to say to a bunch of folks like, hey, if you have $5,000 or more and you want 8 to 10% return on that money without doing anything, let's talk. I can help you. I can fill in the blanks for you. And when it was like, to me, that sounds brilliant. It sounds like a genius move, but sometimes the conversations I have in my head are not received as well as I expect. So I started sharing this idea with people, and so far the response has been pretty darn good. Everyone's like, yeah, that sounds wonderful. I got money in my 401k that's just sitting there, or like on the stock market, which is scary, and I would love to have it backed by real estate. So that for me is my whole focus right now. It's building this network. It's finding people that have money sitting around that's not working for them, or just that they feel like they want to invest. They know that they should, but it just seems so far away. Like, how am I going to earn $30,000, $50,000 here in San Diego, $500,000 to invest in property? well, if I could break it down for you and get it down to where it's, as low as $5,000 and you could start getting 8 to 10% on that, would that give you hope? Would that give you something to work towards? And if so, then that's, then I feel like I'm doing my job, and that's an opportunity I feel like I can provide for people that maybe didn't have an opportunity to get into real estate before. And so that for me is what's really got me fired up right now. And that's why I was so excited when, your podcast and what you're doing with it, and the direction of it and the focus is like so exciting, because it's such a life, it sounds kind of cliche, but it really is a life-changing conversation to have with people about this. So thank you, Amy, for what you're doing with your show and for having me on to get to talk about it, because it just gets me so fired up.
Yeah, I can feel that. It's fantastic. And I think it's such a great testimony to one of the themes that we talk about a lot, is this innate human capacity for fresh thoughts, for ideas, for insight, and how you have had that, and it has a living energy around you now. That's one thing with building business that I've seen the more I'm in this entrepreneur world. It's like you have projects and you have a lot of ideas, but there are certain paths that do have that clarity, that have that energy to them. Not to say that you don't run into bumps in the road, but still having that kind of inside out experience, I think, plays an enormously huge role. I know we don't have that much time left, but let's just leave it for this. If someone is listening right now and is really new to this conversation, what would be the one thing that you would want them to take home after today's show?
Good question. Yeah, it would probably be to just, keep it as simple as possible and reverse engineer it. Look at what are the things that really matter to you? What are the things that make you happy? What are the things you're already doing in your life that you maybe take for granted, that it's like, yeah, I just enjoy doing this, or, I'd like to do a little bit more of this, and give it a monetary value. Do a spreadsheet, a cash flow, financial statement. The financial statement is really, I think, the big takeaway, at least it was for me, in being able to escape the 9 to 5, and be able to have, or at least have a path toward escaping it, have some clarity around it, because without that, it's like, for me, if I want to give a shout out to my wife, because again, it's not the numbers and the details aren't my personal strength. So for me, I really need it. Like, she's my numbers coach. She's good at that kind of stuff. Like, I get the concepts, but applying it to my life for me was, I needed help. And so other folks, like, if you realize you're one of those people that needs help, find somebody that is good at that side, and maybe you can do some kind of, co-op, or, exchange for services or something to just help you get that financial statement down in a living, breathing kind of Google Doc, an Excel spreadsheet, that when you change this number, when this expense goes up, you see it. When you cut that expense, it goes down, and you can track your cash flow. And I think if nothing else, if you just get more clear about that, that alone can just completely change the trajectory of your life.
Fantastic way to end the show. Well, Winston, before we let you go, can you please let people know where they can find you to learn more information about what's going on? Maybe they'd be interested in kind of the real estate coaching and the syndicate.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So probably one of the, I'll give a couple of resources that folks can get if you want to really get if you're interested in the coaching and real estate investing side of things, then the website to go to would be masterycoachingwithwinston.com. Masterycoachingwithwinston.com is probably the most complete real estate education and investing program that you could get involved in. And then the other, actually, Amy was kind enough to be on my podcast, and I'd like to be able to have you guys listen to her interview, which will be available at findyourflow.com/Amy Leo. And you'll be able to hear her interview. And just by going to the Find Your Flow website, you'll be able to see that there's one of the main flow dynamics is cash flow, because it's such an important element of life. It's so definitely tune in there, check it out, and you'll be able to learn more about that. And I'll be updating folks there as far as the getting in on the syndications and the pooling and being able to invest for getting that cash flow going for a nominal investment. So those are the best resources. So thank you, Amy.
Fantastic, Winston. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. I wish you a great rest of your day. I'm about ready to hit the hay here, but I'm 9 hours ahead of you. So enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thank you so much, Winston. Take care.
You too, Amy. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
It's time for another one of Amy's real stories. Cue the drum roll. Man gets dropped from his academy soccer club at 16 for being too small. But he refused to give up his dream of playing soccer. As a young adult, he then worked his way up the ranks, all the way from the 7th Division League in the UK to the Premier League. This is a huge accomplishment. The man's name is Jamie Vardy, and his persistence, patience, and tenacity is a testimony to the human spirit and what is possible for human beings, what we are truly capable of accomplishing. He was let go from an academy soccer club as a teenager for being too small. He then joined a non-league 7th Division club where he would play soccer after 12-hour shifts in a carbon fiber factory. He did this for 7 years. At the time, his home stadium only held 3,500 people, and he got paid roughly $45 per game. Then, in 2010, he got signed to a new team for £15,000, another team in 2011 for £250,000, and in 2012 got signed to the professional Premier League Leicester City for £1 million. This was a record-breaking contract for a non-league player to receive. Jamie has ultimately accomplished what few in sports have done. In the U.S., his feat is comparable to a leading NFL player initially playing in a Division III or lower-level school. In soccer, the general consensus is that players for the professional league only come out of team-specific academies, institutions designed specifically to nurture young talent. But Jamie shows what is possible. What a brilliant example of the power that dogged determination, guts, and scoring goals has. A lot of goals. Jamie's story definition gives weight to the importance of patience, practice, and that each person does have the potential to develop in accordance to his or her own unique timeline. That's all we have for today's show. If you want to learn about more topics we should have learned in school, besides money, subscribe to our podcast. It's so easy, and you will get the full access to our library of inspirational and practical interviews, such as a woman who was in her 40s when she started her professional music career and now receives nationwide radio play. All that and more can be found by typing in your search engine "Escaping the Rat Race with Amy Leo" on either iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or YouTube. Speaking of that episode I just mentioned with the woman who started her professional music career in her 40s, the episode is called "Why You Shouldn't Give Up on Your Dreams Quite Yet." And it is truly an amazing episode about her journey as a singer. And we can't help queuing her up again today for you. Her name is Suzanne Bargman, or you can find her otherwise known as Sus B. And the song I'm going to play is called "Fall Up." Until next time, keep rocking.
When everything gets in the way of everything else around, so serious, oblivious to what it's really about. Sometimes we get so caught up in the It just goes to